Hi everyone, it's Brett. I have been thinking about if I should take a plant's life or not. Real life decisions can be tough. Maybe video game decisions are easier. Undertale was initially released on September 15th, 2015. It's time to get to the bottom of this, and I say that because the main character falls underground, shown in a fun little cutscene that talks about humans locking up monsters underground. I had to wonder who survives a fall like that, but the yellow flowers really sell it. This flower called Flowey tried to trick me. I knew that it probably wasn't a good idea to have my character's soul run into what the flower was giving. Moving around to avoid things is fun. This is a creative tutorial, and seeing all the flower's expressions was quite amusing. Nice to see someone who seems to dislike plants because I might not have made it. Tutorial does a good job explaining some of the game. That death doesn't have to be inflicted. She kind of holds my hand for a while, and I mean that both metaphorically and literally. She also defaced the walls to make the level easier, and I don't feel like supporting that decision. I really like the save points with the simple look and animation, and how different text will be given at different save spots. I was a big fan of fleeing to start off because I was focused on progressing. The options given for an encounter can be different for monsters, which is interesting. The fight option is simple enough, just some timing to it. I accidentally took something's life, but the game doesn't exactly give an "Are you sure?" warning when clicking the attack button. I didn't even realize I was on the attack button. I just didn't know what I was doing. So I wouldn't call this outright intentional ending of life. Although this is probably my fault technically. The sparing option is interesting. I found it to be something I frequently used because it just feels like the natural way to play the game to me. Confronting Toriel is an interesting scenario because she has been helping me out so much and now she's hurting me. She has some tough attacks. I really liked how she stops trying to attack me. It's a cool detail that she doesn't want to inflict death upon me. I also like that I don't have to lose because of this. I liked the tonal shift when meeting Sans. Going from ominous to goofy is quite amusing. Then Papyrus shows up too, showing off his extravagant personality, which is entertaining. He mentions puzzles, and I sure am glad he did because that gives me a good segue to say that I found many puzzles to be fun in this game. The X and circle puzzles might have been some of my favorite, however the block moving puzzles were very good too. I somehow wasn't able to figure out I wasn't supposed to be moving during the blue attacks and found myself at the game over screen. I sure hope that doesn't happen again. I better not get my hopes up. This game is hard sometimes. It could take my lunch money and not care. There is no difficulty setting to make it easier, so I have to deal with what I consider to be tough foes. The game looks nice. It's simple, but the art style looks nice for the most part. The background behind the bridge is wonderful looking. All the different areas are interesting. The snow area is pleasant, and the hotland place with the mechanical aspects is fitting for a late game area. The hotlands remind me of some of the late game areas in the Mario series. Probably has to do with the heat. Also, the mushroom place has a cool atmosphere. The colors and textures look very nice. The mushrooms can be turned off and on, so that's fun. The ghost house had some wacky and whimsical stuff going on. It's breaking the 4:3 aspect ratio! Papyrus is a funky encounter. Having the movement change to jumping along with the soul changing color was a good twist. I liked how the game expanded the box. This was a great example of the game just not caring about consistency. And I thought it was wonderful. Undyne is pretty intimidating, and having this evil knight type of figure makes for some suspenseful moments. This monster kid is a silly part of the game and helps out some, which is fun to see transpire. The dummy encounter was unique. Having to get his attacks to hit him was neat. His animation goes a little overboard. Undyne encounter stood out. There's another color change and gameplay shakeup. This time it's about blocking, which gets really difficult. Running away after the fight and fighting again was a creative situation. Although having to fight the boss 4 times seems like a bit much to me. Funny how there's a water cooler existing right here. The scientist is helping me, but originally made a robot that wants to exterminate me, but the scientist doesn't want it to anymore. This is a silly scenario. It's neat that the scientist is trying to help, but I got tired of how much the phone went off. Big missed opportunity not putting a silencer option on that thing. The robot was a fun enemy. It just did a bunch of wacky and entertaining stuff. There's a quiz show and also a cooking show, which has a jetpack sequence that I liked. The sequence was not that long, but was very fun, and I kind of wanted more of it. It's nice that his final encounter has a checkpoint for the battle built in. That way I don't have to do some of the battle over again. The checkpoint was in the form of a switch, which turns him goofy. I mean, he kind of already was. The shooting gameplay was fun. Spider boss was difficult. I like how the poison locked me to some sort of grid where I could only move in certain more restricted spots. Dodging most stuff was fun, although it got very difficult to do. I had barely any heals, and the one that I did have took a long time to work. I backtracked and got a whole bunch of hot dogs or whatever, and then beat the boss, or I guess spared it after that. The backtracking to get more heals was not that long, which I appreciated. There's a nice conversation with Sans in the restaurant for the most part. There was also a nice conversation with Sans at Grillby's earlier. I did like the detail of just standing on the chair. There's also a very meaningful conversation with Sans around some pillars. He explains some important stuff there which would have been nice to have known earlier. There's a bunch of dialogue in this game. A lot of it's funny and heartfelt. I'm surprised there was this much dialogue though. It does add a ton of charm to the game. It's cool that the monsters explain the backstory to what happened to King Asgore's son. Asgore was not what I was expecting. I thought he would look a lot more evil. It's fascinating that he doesn't try to destroy me immediately. I like when characters are like that. The fight is very tough, but it was fun to weave around the attacks. I really enjoyed this boss fight and found it to be very cool. There's a nice bit of dialogue which really helps to understand Asgore's point of view. So what do I do? What do I do? Also, what do I do? I decided not to end his existence. Oh no! Flowey just took out that guy. Then he seemed to break the game. Oh, what is that? I don't even want to look at that. This encounter is wild. The amount of attacks and the incorporation of all the souls that have been collected as different phases of the fight was a cool idea. Flowey seemed to want to destroy people for his own satisfaction, so I decided it would be best to prevent him from doing photosynthesis from now on. Anyway, I also didn't want to deal with him again. Well, I beat Undertale. Apparently there's more than one ending. I'm going to go on a sparing spree. I like how the dialogue is slightly different. Some of the characters seem to remember me. So being Pacifist grants access to the true lab at some point. Bit of an unsettling and difficult section. Anyway, encountering Asgore leads to no battle because Toriel intervenes. Then others show up from the journey too, and Flowey decides to show up too. He took everyone's souls and turned back into Asgore and Toriel's kid named Asriel. I didn't think that would happen. The Asriel encounter has a really cool visual design to it. The fight is tough with a ton of creative attacks. It's nice to have another phase. There's a little save your allies section which adds to the finality. I almost didn't make it again, but it's alright because there's a sequence at the end where he doesn't try to make me lose. Anyway, I kept clicking the save button which helped finish the game. Everybody's enjoying the non-underground and there's a whole new end credits section. Then there's a part where I was tasked with avoiding names. The task was not complete. The game was fun and the gameplay was quite engaging. There were some great songs in this game. Having different story paths is interesting. There's also a path where you can end many monsters' lives. That sounds horrific! Anyway, so am I going to Undertale jail for accidentally murdering that guy at the beginning of the game?